Anglo-Saxon Cosmology, Part 2, Bede. And yes, this video will really center around Bede because he's more or less the main subject of this video regarding Anglo-Saxon cosmology. Because in Part 1, we sort of left off with talking about a source written by Bede, and this going expounding upon the writings of Bede and what influenced him and stuff like that. So, because he's a significant writer in the Anglo-Saxon period. But let's go right in, just reviewing what we said earlier in the first video, that with that Anglo-Saxon cosmology, and this is after Abrahamization, were kings at the time. They converted to Christianity. Well, from there on, the cosmology, how people thought of the universe, was Abrahamic in nature, therefore simplified, and thus the vocabulary was, if you will, tailored towards expressing that cosmology, that way of seeing the universe, which is interesting of itself, historically speaking. And so, moving right on, we're going to talk about Beda of Northumbria. So this is a man roughly from the 8th century, 700s. Very significant writer. He's known for writing the ecclesiastical history of the English people. He's known for that, but he's also known for other things too, like Time of Reckoning, and this other works too. De Temporibus is another one, which was briefly talked about in the previous video regarding Anglo-Saxon cosmology, but we're going to go more into Beda. So in this video, we're going to go over the hexaemeral influence, and this is pretty interesting of itself to better understand medieval church writers of their time, and why would they say the things that they do. And also we're going to go into a bit into Bede's commentary on Genesis, as well as Bede's text De Natura Rerum, which translates roughly to of the nature of things. And for those of you who don't know, Latin is not my strong suit. This is a channel about Old English, Anglo-Saxon. For those of you who do know Latin, I applaud you. Keep up with your Latin learning, because knowing Latin when it comes to really studying the early medieval period becomes actually very useful. So yeah, you guys are the true time travelers if you know how to read Latin. So anyway, moving right on. So hexaemeral influence. Okay, what is hexaemeron or meta? What that is, it deals with trying to make sense of like the Abrahamic creation story in Genesis, like trying to make sense of like what's being said there. So because, well, this is going to be me being blunt about this, or if you will, based. These Abrahamic peoples, they had to use outside sources to try to like make sense of, of their literature. So they use Greek philosophy to purport, to explain, or if you will, expand Abrahamic cosmology with mental speculation. Because you would have some writers that would think, oh well, I think it's 8 heavens, or this many heavens, or that, this and that. Well, like, and that thus you have disputes, you get arguments over like my thinking over your thinking, just as people today like to mentally speculate on this or that thing about the nature of the gods, and stuff of spiritual topics and whatnot. Because why do people fall into this? Well, truth be told, that mental speculation for a lot of people is fun. It's an intellectual sense gratification, to be very specific about it. So that aside, so mental speculation, to be very blunt about it, and it's also the hexaemeral. Forgive me. The Greek philosophy usage is also an attempt to make Abrahamic cosmology seem equal to and eventually seem superior to non-Abrahamic dharmic worldview. And I put in dharmic there because I consider the pre-Christian, pre-Abrahamic religions of Europe, such as like ancient Greek religion, ancient Roman religion, ancient Norse religion, so to speak, or spirituality. I'm using the word religion here very loosely here for sake of convenience of making this video. That these are dharmic. These spiritualities are in line with nature. They try to live with nature. Don't see themselves against nature, acknowledging of other divinities and stuff like that. So, but to go a little further, let's carry on. In that, with the Hexaemeral influence is as follows: that the men of the early church, compelled to meet the arguments of pagans, had to make their own accounts capable of standing the test of scrutiny, and often going beyond mere defense of their faith. They attempted to prove that Christian doctrines, including those of Genesis, are in agreement with the best pagan thought or superior to it. As the church acquired power, the polemic tone grew sharper. Okay, so to really understand Abrahamism and how Christianity came about in Europe and whatnot, it's just that the nature of Abrahamism is very tribalistic, in the sense that, like, us versus them. How can we take over, imperial force, if you will, and so they did this through many means and all spheres of experience, if that makes sense. And in this case, they're using the intellectual route. So we can't defeat these people by mere force. We got to use our brains. So we have to take what they have, repackage it in our own way, and then spew it back at them, and just say that we're just as good as these, in their words, pagan peoples. But as demographics grew, because for Abrahamism it's not about quality of people, it's about quantity. So by the nature of demographics and numbers, they grew, as a church grew power. Of course, the polemic tone, the debates, if you will, grew sharper. So it's more in line with like blind faith, which is an Abrahamic feature, whereas the dharmic one, it's faith, but with experience, and not just with experience, but that which can be explained in a very logical, philosophical way, right? So in this, I'm kind of giving a contrast to dharmic thought, non-Abrahamic, to Abrahamic thought. All right, so. Right. Anyway, so and this quote here from Frank can't pronounce his name, Eggleston Robbins, it really reveals Abrahamism, right? So anyway, so let's go right on to Bede. So Bede's commentary on Genesis. So we got some Latin here. Forgive me for my bad Latin, but here we go. Quelli hic proprie dicuntur, quia multi sunt ut, scintitur auricolor, quelli septemplicis ader, no THs, ather, quorum hac sunt, nomina nia okay, I'm an Anglo-Saxon, so I'm going to read it as ar and ather Olympus, spatium igneum firmamentum coelum angelorum et coelum trinitatis. Okay, that was terrible Latin on my part, but I had fun anyway. Okay, so I don't really know Latin that well. I mean, I can make out a few words, but I use Google Translate to help me out in this. So from Bede, his making or his own ideas, his mental speculation, if you will, that the heavens, it's interesting how we have the term heavens and not just heaven in the singular. So in the plural, according to Bede, there's 7 of them. So we got one that's called air, ether, Olympus, which is really interesting of itself. Then we got the fiery space and the firmament and the heaven of angels and the heaven of the Trinity. So really interesting stuff. And I like to highlight and go a little deep into Olympus. Why Olympus? That's really sounds very ancient Greek to me when you have this word Olympus, because anyone who knows ancient Greek literature and not mythology literature, that it's the mountain, the great mountain that and known as the abode of the gods, found in Greek literature, which is very interesting of itself. But going a little further onto this, that we learn from this text here, the universe and stars being an original theory on the visible creation founded on the laws of nature, Thomas Wright, that Bede and another fellow named Rabanus, if I can read properly, that the air is I mean, this could be very well meant. You know, this video will go touch on a bit on Rabanus and how he does a little mental speculation. So we got the air, the ether or the aether, and the atmosphere, the upper air. It's interesting how the Olympus here is known as the inferior fire, as opposed to the element of fire, which is the superior fire. And then you got the firmament with the sphere of the fixed stars, and then you got the angelical region, where you got the crystalline heaven, if I can read properly. Anyway, realm of the Trinity, the Imperium, or something like that. So that's really interesting itself, and the link to read this will be in the description below. For any source that I have in this video, I'll be you can find in the link below, so you can read it for yourselves, guys. So moving right on, regarding Olympus, because this really caught my eye. We have from Thomas Aquinas in his Summa Totius Theologiae, or Theologiae. Again, I'm bad at Latin. And I'm not going to read this one in Latin because I don't want to embarrass myself more than I already have already. But since the okay, I'll read the translation here. But since the space continues two elements, of course, fire and air, and in each of them is called upper and lower regions. Therefore, Rabanus distinguishes this heaven into four. The lower region, the Olympian heaven, from the height of a certain mountain called Olympus. So this is really interesting of itself. Of course, this is an excerpt. This isn't the whole thing, but the fact that even Thomas Aquinas acknowledged that this Rabanus guy, or it could be Rabanus. I mean, I don't know. Probably the H got dropped or something like that. Anyway, that's just me pulling a linguistic aside. But yeah, it's interesting of itself that that this term Olympus is used. But moving right on, with Bede and his De Natura Rerum, of nature of things, again we find this attestation of the word Olympus. So nam supra luna quag aris ater isquem confinio currit omnia pura ac diurna lucis sunt plena, cuius vincinia tangere fetur Olympus. Okay, I said I wouldn't read before, but I did it anyway. So assuming this is a correct translation, and for those of you who do know Latin, please, like, tell me down below whether this is a good translation, bad translation, because you guys are awesome. Remember that. Studying Latin is awesome. For above the moon, which runs on the border of air and ether, everything is pure and full of daylight, whose neighborhood is supposed to touch Olympus. So it's interesting with itself how, again, Bede, if you will, doubles down and using this word, so to speak, of Olympus as his understanding of the as a cosmic, his understanding of the universe. So conclusion. So Anglo-Saxon cosmology after Abrahamization consists of, as we've reviewed, 7 heavens, one of which is named Olympus, thanks to Bede. We've got the earth and planets, and simply hell. And so it's really interesting of itself how the Christian writers of this time had to borrow from other cultures and borrow from elsewhere, such as Greek philosophy, or take some ideas and like mental speculate and repackage them and just spew it as truth to others of their time. I don't know. It's just interesting how that is the case. And of course, this is used as a polemic, used like as a intellectual weapon, so to speak, against pagan. I shouldn't say. I don't like using the word pagan. I guess European dharmic thinkers of the time or intellectuals that or what have you. And by that, I'm talking about like like people who worship like the Greek gods or the Germanic gods or what have you. But anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you're new, and if you really like the channel, please become a patron at my Patreon page down below. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.